with this. Let's start with this. So I'm a believer, if you show me success 3 or 4 or 5 times doing something, it doesn't matter if you're a tax attorney, it doesn't matter if you're a landscaper, I think you're smart. So Frank Reich got the most efficient year ever out of Andrew Luck, the most efficient year ever out of Carson Wentz, and Phillip Rivers had, on his last leg, had one of his top 3 most efficient seasons. And I look at Wentz and Reich and I think, I know he's broken, but I got a track record of Frank Reich working everywhere he goes. I think he figures out Wentz somehow, and I think there are coaches, you know them, there are these coaches that are just better. They just solve stuff. So I think Wentz and Indy's going to work. You are more of a skeptic.
I look at this situation, and I think how broken Philadelphia must think he is. They're going to take the largest salary cap hit in the history of the NFL. They trade him away for what's very small compensation for a guy who was your starting quarterback and who you've paid that much money. You paid so much money and so many draft picks to acquire him in the first place. You fire your head coach. That's usually the fix for a young quarterback. You fire the head coach. You see if the new guy can come in and change things. You hire the offensive coordinator, Frank Reich's offensive coordinator. So I think he's staying, because of that reason. And then you're still willing to trade him. So they just must feel like he can't be successful there. Okay, now that being said, maybe a change of scenery will work, but this is a guy who's had an injury history, who gets sacked at a very high rate, who's had problems in the locker room, and who's coming off a really difficult year. There's a lot of things that he's going to have to do differently and do right to have a different outcome in Indy.
So I want to throw this. You used to coach the Jets. I want to throw this at you. So in the AFC East right now, you have Belichick, who's probably the best defensive coach in the history of the league. Sean McDermott, excellent defensive coach. Brian Flores appears to be doing a really nice job. And the Jets are going to get rid of Darnold and go with a rookie quarterback. I say to myself, I would rather just keep Darnold, trade that pick, and give Sam more weapons, because I think Sam's got a market. Chris Ballard was interested. I just look at the division and I think to myself, you're going to go with a rookie quarterback with those 3 defensive coaches? You're trying to climb a mountain. That's my perception. Or are you in the camp of, listen, you got to start over. It's not working with Darnold?
Well, I don't know if we agree or disagree on this point, because I heard you talking about Sam Darnold being traded and whether it's Chicago or Washington. And my thought process is, if you really feel like this young quarterback can actually improve and you have the asset in place at the most important position, it makes no sense for the Jets to trade him. And like I said, with the Philly situation, usually you change head coaches and you think that's going to help the quarterback that's there, and that it's not a quarterback issue, it's a coaching issue. So yeah, you're absolutely right. If you can keep him and you believe that he has the potential to improve on what he's done, you've got incredible draft capital. You've got incredible money for free agency. You can trade that pick and get even more draft capital. I think if you can possibly maintain him and feel like you can win, it's the best decision they can make.
All right, here's the disagreement part. So
we have a lot of those, Colin. We have a lot of those.
Okay, so I said before is that there's, you always go on the internet or you read these in magazines. Like they say, the 3 or 4 signs somebody's having an affair. And it's always when they change their habits. Like people, we're all kind of creatures of habit. People they won't let you look at their phone. They're coming home later. They work out a lot. And it's like, oh, they're changing habits. So I'm supposed to believe the most detailed, precise, planned organization in the NFL for 20 years, New England. They don't have a quarterback. They have the worst skilled people in the league. Their secondary is deteriorating. They don't have an elite pass rusher. Half of the defensive coaches are either Bill Belichick or his kids. I look at this organization, I'm like, okay, you have all the answers here. If I'm Robert Kraft this morning, they just lost their GM, so Bill has more personnel power, and I don't love him as a drafter. At some point, if I'm Robert Kraft, I'm like, I know you were successful, and I love you, Bill. You tell me what the plan is, because I don't understand. Apparently, they weren't interested in Wentz. Stafford said no thanks. At some point, the market's drying up, isn't it, for a quarterback?
Well, what you said is habits and changing habits, and I don't think you can look at a lack of activity as a lack of a plan. And what's New England always done? They've never been first week free agency, pay big money guys. That's not what they've done. They've never rushed to be the first in any place. If anything, Bill's strength, his greatest strength, is in that free agency world, is in that acquiring pro talent world. And so much is going to change. We've seen, who would have thought Carson Wentz would be traded or Jared Goff would be traded? You see the things that have changed already in this small window of time. Over the course of the draft, they could potentially get a quarterback there. You could see maybe Garoppolo moves. A lot of guys could still move. They're going to assess what comes available as opposed to rushing to make a decision just to make a decision. It's not how they're wired. And unless they believe it's a significant upgrade, why would they ever go get a guy just to get a guy?
So you think Garoppolo has not only been hurt 3 of the last 4 years, but he's been hurt in week 2, week 3, and week 2, which tells you it's one thing if Mahomes gets banged up after 15 weeks of play. If you're hurt by week 2, 3 of the last 4 years, you're brittle. There's no other way to get around it. One time he got hurt without getting hit. So Garoppolo doesn't feel like a legitimate. Bill's not going to sign Garoppolo to a long contract.
No, look, I was just using Garoppolo as an example because of their relationship. And you remember when Garoppolo they're making that decision, you were in the New England should keep Garoppolo camp back in the day.
Yeah.
And that's actually worked out when they kept Tom. I didn't think Cam Newton would work. And they got Cam in June for basically nothing. And there's a fumble against Buffalo and there's a goal line play against Seattle. Otherwise, that's a 9-7 decision. And this is a team coming off 8 players opting out. They've now got salary cap room. They have assessed, you're a year removed from the Tom Brady legacy. I think that things will look dramatically different, at the start of the season this year versus where they were last year.
All right, here's another disagreement bomb. I think first of all, Pittsburgh sold their soul a little with Ben. They've known for years he doesn't commit in the offseason. They know he's not great with film study. They know he's not always a great teammate with offensive stars. They know he can be dramatic when you draft a quarterback 4th round. They know, I've been told by people who I trust that their audible system is incredibly remedial, and they've known this for years. And now they're trapped because they've placated Ben time and time again, which is fine when he's in his athletic prime because he was such a unique and special player. Down the stretch, Eric, he was old, and his lack of physical commitment was pretty obvious. He had 8 picks in the 4 games. He was terrible. I'm done. I think they're trapped. You still like him.
Well, we're talking about young quarterbacks that haven't done anything and them being traded to teams. And if they get traded to those teams are suddenly going to go to the playoffs. The Steelers won the division last year. They were 12-4. He threw 33 touchdowns. They were dead last in running the football. In the final game of the season, you can kill Ben, but they asked him to throw the ball 68 times. When you think of Steelers football, you think of really good defense, a really physical and effective running game, and then Ben Roethlisberger. Why don't they commit to fixing the running game and see what Ben can do at that point? And the guy's, what's he at, 16, 18 seasons, whatever it is, he's had 2 losing seasons. Two. So we're talking about guys that have barely had any winning seasons going somewhere else, as opposed to keeping Ben. You could extend his contract out a year so to get the salary cap number down without giving him any new money, and you still have a chance to win. I think they're putting the blame in the wrong spot here.
All right, we're just going to have to agree to disagree on that. I think he's an old man, and he looks. I am so over.
A lot of people thought Tom Brady was an old man when he had a poor game, at the end of his last, run in New England.
By the way, what did you make of that? Isn't that just amazing? How I swear to God, coach in week 8 I had Bruce Arians on yesterday, and I said at week 8 there was so much turbulence. I'm like, this is a mess. And I asked him, I said, when did you guys kind of say to yourself privately, okay, this is working? And he said the bye week. Like week 12, like it took a lot. I am shocked by how good they were. You know what I'm shocked, Eric? How good the offensive line was in the last month. That was always been a middling offensive line. I thought they were a dominant unit at the end. What surprised you?
My greatest takeaway from that is they started to run the ball more, and they started to do things more in line with what Tom's always done over the last 20 years. They worked the tight ends more. They worked the inside part of the offense more. It looked like they were running things that I've always seen Tom run. And you heard the message from Bruce. They gave him more control. They gave him more leeway. And what do? You take advantage of the greatest asset you have is Tom's mind. And when he understands exactly what's taking place and the other guys understand it as well, I mean, he's going to go to the right place with the ball. That to me was the biggest difference is allowing him to just almost take over the offense, and then suddenly things transformed. It is amazing, though. It is, and great. I love the story.
You know where I watched that game, Coach?
Where?
In a hospital bed.
That's not good.
I'm just on like a picture of American courage, Coach. You're looking at it right
you
here.
Are. Your bravery is inspiring. It's like Tom Brady, Colin Cowherd. Those, I'm going to point those out to my boys for bravery and heroics.
Enough of you. All right, Mangini. Enjoy Cleveland. It's snowing again today. Good talking to you.
Great to see you, Colin.
All right, good stuff. All right.